Hey, welcome back guys to Sculptober Day 2. I am Follygon, and in this one I'm going to be working on Beast from Beauty and the Beast. The prompt for today is curse. That was one of the first things that came to mind for me, and I thought it would fit my preferred kind of art style here pretty well. So let's go ahead and get started taking a look. And I should mention here at the beginning, if you are interested in learning more about Sculptober, you can of course check out the link in the description, sculptober.com, for some more info for participating or just checking out all the artwork that everybody's working on. All right, so the beast, where do we start? Well, I always start all my sculptures with a sphere, which you already saw me fly past and started to define a lot of the shapes. The early parts of this sculpt actually went by pretty quick for me. A lot of what I'm doing in the beginning actually turned out better than I thought it would initially. A lot of what I'm doing in the early stages is not worrying about proportions or how things are looking very well, super neat or anything like that. But surprisingly, a lot of it did turn out a lot better in those early stages. So normally I'm just kind of focusing on getting something on the canvas as quick as possible, because proportions are kind of something that you need all the other parts and pieces to reference against to be able to, start getting those all correct. So a lot of this early stuff is me just going through with a move brush, a clay brush, and slapping something on my mesh as quick as I possibly can. And it went pretty quick. I use curve tube meshes here to insert little simple pieces of geometry, like blocking out some of the hairs around the side of the face. That is going to be for his mane, I guess is what you would call that. I'm not really sure, but essentially that's going to flow into the larger portion of the body. Because I only have one day to do every single one of these, which is a pretty quick turnaround for me compared to my normal length videos, which if you're interested in, there's probably a link down below in the description to check out. I normally spend, multiple weeks on those, but these I only have a day on, so I have to work really, really fast. And because of that, I am only doing the bust, or, kind of head / upper torso portion of the character. And then I terminate that with a little bit of a robe / cape kind of thing later on, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. I gotta finish off cleaning up some of the geometry around the face. That was kind of one of the hardest parts for this character, trying to figure out the fur, I guess, not hair, but the fur and how that was going to blend into that larger form of the body. It looks pretty awkward right now in a lot of different areas, but it kind of comes together pretty quick here. I always say that you shouldn't be too worried about what things are looking like early on, as there's really no point in doing that. You only have a few marks on your canvas, and it's not the final product, so you shouldn't be embarrassed by what things look like early on. And if you are, I think it's really just something where you need to do it a little bit more, get more comfortable in your own sculpting skin, and just kind of be comfortable with what I call the alien face here. So I always like to experiment and try new techniques, even when I'm doing just, something quick like this in a daily challenge. So for the eyes, I thought it would be cool to just pull out a little bit of that geometry or that rounded form around the eyeball, then create a mask and just push that in for the overall shape of the eyelids. That is something that I do with nostrils, and I also do that with mouths a lot of the time to create the mouth cavity. So I thought, why not? I should, kind of try that here with the eyes as well. I will probably not be doing that again very soon, because it does cause a lot of not necessarily issues, but it doesn't really help you in any way. It's a quick way to get a quick eye cavity there and get some quick eyelids, but your eyelids end up being really flat. If I were to redo this, I think that I would have to pull out that form really far to essentially get the direction of the eyelids going the right way. So because of the way that I did that, it's a nice way to experiment. You learn from your mistakes. So because of that, I have to go back through, and you can see me creating some pinches and using now the move brush with some masking to adjust and kind of pull out that eyelid, heading in the right direction, so that it feels like it's kind of wrapping around and grabbing that eyeball. Anytime you have all these separate objects like, an eye socket and an eyeball, or a mouth and teeth, or hands that's, holding something, you need that to feel really believable. And when you have an eye socket and these eyelids that are just kind of really flat, they look pretty silly with that eye in there, and it probably won't look super great. So, a little extra work there to kind of clean up those eyes, but eyes are tough. Eyes take a while, and the eyes look pretty dang awkward right now, and they're gonna take some more time to kind of clean up and get to a place where they're starting to look nice. The face, overall, looks pretty awkward, but the good news is that I have most of the shapes in there that I need. Most of the larger kind of proportions and hard work done for the most part. Now, those proportions aren't perfect. They're not, he's not looking like the Beast yet. But the more we kind of head in that direction, now that we have the parts and pieces, we can focus on proportions a little bit more and get him to start feeling a little bit more like the Beast, especially once I add some color and poly paint on there. That definitely helps quite a bit. There was definitely some problem areas that I had with this sculpt that I'd like to point out a little bit here with the shape of the face. I actually correct it here, I think, in a moment. But it has to do with the way that the face kind of tapers down into this kind of more narrow shape. So in the images that I was referencing from the original film, and you can kind of, you'll see me here soon starting to push in and pinch in around that face, it appears like it starts to taper in on the face down towards that, towards the mouth and chin and that weird little beard that he's got going on, or goatee, or whatever that's called. So I was noticing that in the reference images, but the more I pushed in that direction, the more he started to feel gaunt and skeletal. So that wasn't really working. So, sometimes you see these things in a reference image and, from one angle it looks like it might be this one way, but from another it might be another way. So it's sometimes just stuff that you have to experiment with and play with. Luckily, it's pretty easy for me to fix and correct. All it takes is some masking and some growing, and I'll fix that here in a little bit. But, sometimes you just gotta try it to figure out where those mistakes are and where you can kind of correct some things. One thing that really did actually help me to notice that even a little bit more was once I started putting color on. I think color is super important when you are trying to work on proportions and really get the feel down for a character. That, plus the fur that I mentioned on the side of the head, transitioning into the body, his mane, essentially. Figuring that out for how that would transition really helped me figure out that head a lot more, especially down towards the chin. The color that I am beginning to add here was also a little tough, and that is mainly because all the images from this old movie, there would be a lot of different lighting scenarios and all this stuff, and I was trying to use some of those images to sample some colors, and none of them were really working very well. Seriously, I tried 6 or 7 different photos, and I was pulling multiple colors from them and trying to get them to work. Eventually, you'll see me kind of clean up the paint here in a little bit, but you can kind of see how silly it looks right now, right? But eventually, I just kind of manually started selecting colors and making slight adjustments to those. A little trick for those that are interested in doing some painting on your characters here in ZBrush: if you have a paintbrush and you turn down your RGB intensity, instead of using 100, that RGB intensity essentially means 100% fill, but if you turn that down to, let's say, 25 or something, that would be considered a 25% infill. So if you have an object that is, white, and you have a really bright red, and you fill that in with 25% of that red, it'll make it a little bit pink, kind of. So that's essentially what I use here with this character to start taking some of the colors that are on the face and pushing them in a little bit more accurate direction. Like I said, though, I kind of had to experiment and do a lot of that manually through here, so I took some time playing around and trying to get something that looked nice. But now you can see, I think it becomes even more obvious that we're heading towards that beastly direction, but there's definitely some stuff that still feels off. That really narrow chin, feeling very gaunt still. Got to get some teeth in, of course. But after we're done with that, I can begin fixing some of the proportions around that lower chin area. One thing that I really did want to fix here with the face, I say fix, but not technically fix, but change, was some of the proportions with the length of the nose. There were some things there. I kind of wanted to squash the face a bit more, but I don't think it you'll see the final character here soon and you can judge for yourself. But, I only have a day for these, and sometimes, some things get forgotten, or sometimes, I just don't have time to always do every little thing that I want to do. I would love to, sculpt the whole character here for the beast, but I don't really have enough time to do that in a single day. Or if I did, it would probably be, be pretty janky. But yeah, here we are in Transpose Master. This essentially takes all my different parts and pieces. It's really cool and allows you to work on all of them at once. And then you can kind of go back to where you have everything split off into separate objects. I merge a bunch of stuff down and back together later on, but I'll talk about that later on once we get to that point. You did notice that I made that face a whole lot wider, and I think that really helped to start push him in that in the correct direction. Another thing that's really kind of awkward when you're painting a character are the eyes. If you're using a reflective material, the direction of your light can hide the reflection in the eye and make your eyes look really dead. If you don't have, I think it's called a farkle, which is an amazing word. But if you can't see that eye reflection, your eyes are gonna feel really awkward and dead. So what I recommend if you are working on your eyes is take your light source, which you can find in the light menu, and move it to the middle so that the light is kind of shining from your perspective, directly from where you're looking at your model. I think that really helps to just make those eyes feel a little bit more lively. If you don't want to mess with your light direction, what you can do is just take a white color with a quick little paintbrush and manually paint in a little highlight on the eye, just to help them feel a little bit more visually close to where you're going to end up seeing them for like a render or something like that. Now moving on to a little bit more work with some of the fur around the sides of the head, transitioning essentially from the jowls, the cheeks, right, into that mane and then into the body. So I'm trying to get this larger flow for all those shapes, and that involves some dynameshing and blending together. If you're not familiar with dynamesh or booleans in general, it essentially takes these two separate objects that I have and combines them and allows me to blend the geometry between them. It'd be like putting one piece of clay on top of another and kind of like smushing them together and starting to blend that. Then I do a quick extraction for the red cape/cloak. I'm gonna go with cloak because cloak just sounds more cool. But the cloak, pretty simple, just getting some quick geometry on there and then using essentially a standard brush to just create a little extra form for that top portion to maybe allude to that kind of folding over at the top, or possibly even a hood. There were a lot of reference images that included that additional form at the top. I couldn't find any images though. I haven't seen the movie in a long time, so I don't know if he has a hood on that cloak or not. So I think just like a little bit of form there kind of alluded to that. It's not a huge deal though because it's at the back of the character and you can't really see it. So no worries there. Just going through, doing some more blending for that fur, a little bit more color correction, lots of softening, lots of just additional quick changes here towards the end. We're nearing those final stages of polish and refinement here, just to get things feeling as nice as we possibly can. And then any quick little changes here that need to happen before I break symmetry, so just getting that cloak feeling a bit nicer. I start thinking about how I am going to terminate the sculpt for the bust, so essentially how I'm going to blend that form of the furry beast into the cloak. So I kind of hide it at the bottom there to make that feel a bit more visually interesting. Some tweaking to the eyes. I was thinking at first that I was going to do a more kind of sad or longing like expression, something a bit more depressing, but I felt like, curse beast, I don't know, I felt, a lot of the time he's maybe a bit more angry, and angry is kind of a pretty simple expression to do. So I kind of maybe took the easy route there a little bit. Sad isn't that hard either. I mean, it just kind of depends. With a character like this, I think he naturally leans towards angry a little bit more, looking at those big teeth and everything else. So yeah, we'll go with a little bit of some angry expression here. Expression's always a lot of fun too. If you guys have not done a lot of expression sculpting, very similar in ideas to posing. You know, it takes some experimentation, it often takes multiple passes, but because I only have a single day here, it's something that has to happen pretty quick. So for a lot of these, if I am doing a character bust, I will do a very simple expression or a very simple break of asymmetry at the end, which I am about to do here very soon. For that, if you guys are looking for a really easy way to just break symmetry at the end of a character in, let's say, just a few minutes to kind of make it a bit more visually interesting, here's what you do. Here's the sculptor's secret. You take one eyebrow, you raise it up a little bit, you take the other one, you put it down a little bit, you know, depending on where they were initially, maybe. I'm giving away all my trade secrets here at the end, but that's okay. This is the easiest way to do a little expression. You just offset those brows a little bit. A lot of expression comes from the brows. You offset the lips a little bit. You kind of raise up one of those cheeks. You just kind of give them a slight bit of quizzical look. I kept it, you know, pretty similar though. Like I said, I didn't want to do a ton of asymmetry breaking there, but just a little bit of an offset there in brow and mouth, and a little bit of lowering in the brows helped to lend to that angry expression there. But that is pretty much it here for our beastly sculpt for day 2 with the prompt curse. So again, if you guys are interested in participating in Sculptober, of course there's a link down below, as well as links to all of my brushes, materials, courses, etc. That's on my Gumroad. Check it out if you're interested. And if you also haven't seen day 1, go on back to my YouTube channel, check it out. Click that subscribe button if you're new around here, and maybe come back tomorrow for day 3. But that's all for this one, guys. Until then, I will see you in the next video.